Hello and welcome to Updog Sports Talk. If you are finding us for the first time, we are a sports podcast that emphasizes covering the teams, the communities, and really just the programs that don't get coverage from mainstream sports media. We do this because your team has a story worth telling. And tonight, we'll be looking at a conference with a lot of fun teams. We'll go to the SoCon of the FCS. This is a conference that is a very proud conference. There's a lot of good programs in here, but it's seen a few down years. Being a one bid league is not what we're used to. So, can more teams step up? Can we see this league get back to its proud roots? We'll find out. Tonight, I'll be going team by team through every team in this conference to allow everyone to shine. We'll be looking at what each team's biggest strength is, what is their biggest concern, and then what does success look like this year. So diving right in here, and at the end of the episode also, I'll go over a sleeper pick for the championship as well as the conference champion. But yeah, starting out here with Chattanooga, the Mocs, a program that usually had been towards the top of the conference, but they've seen things kind of drop off just a little bit, and now kind of comes like a full reset a little bit. They have a lot of new players in here, but at the same time, I think you've got a lot of exciting parts in the Mocs defense. You have Zion Rutledge, a linebacker in particular, but you've got great players really on all levels. So I think you can feel pretty good about where the defense looks. And then also on the offensive side, like you have a pretty good receiver room. Josh Williams is very reliable. And then you have a guy like Taylor Crumedy who looks like he could really step up and be a really good player for them as well. So you got some promising parts in this team, but ultimately there's a lot of newcomers here. They're going to need to mesh, and especially the quarterback position. Is Parker Awad going to be the guy, or Battle Alberson, who played a little bit last year? He had one really really good game, but wasn't the most consistent. So can one of those guys take over and really excel at the position? That is going to be what the Mocs need. And also the other challenge for Chattanooga is going to be the schedule. They have a pretty brutal slate in front of them. So they're going to need to navigate that and remain in contention. We'll have to see how they can hold up to that. In terms of what success looks like, I think at least staying in the race for that large bid to the playoffs is closer to what we can expect there. It's kind of hard to tell because I feel like expectations for Chattanooga are very low this year, but overall, this is a program that usually at least wants to make the playoffs. In the last couple of years, they've been just a little bit short of that. So I feel like falling a little bit short has created some pessimism, but at the same time, it's also made people a little bit low on them. But this is if all goes well, they could definitely be right in that race. And I think that's what they're going to be looking. Now we go to another part of Tennessee, the East Tennessee State Buccaneers. Very quietly, this is actually like a program that only recently restarted their football program just a few years ago. I mean, probably about a decade ago, but you know what? It's still relatively new. But I think they have a new head coach in Will Healy. He is an exciting coach who is going to bring a lot of fun to this program. And they have a lot of talent coming in. Like, he really loaded up, and I misspoke. Will Healy is not in this first year, but he's in the second year. But yeah, they have a lot of new talent coming in. And I think there's a lot in the secondary to like, and overall, like it's a very good portal class that I think a lot of people like, but at the same time, it's kind of one of those where this is a team kind of taking a gamble a little bit. They're gambling on players who are not proven yet, but they have a lot of upside to them. Is this coaching staff going to be able to get them to gel and come together and immediately all in the right direction and win some games? That's going to be the big question there. So this is a real boom or bust team. You could see them in title conference title contention or just struggling to get by. You really don't know what you're going to get from this group. But in terms of what success looks like, I think success looks like getting to that 8-win mark. And I think a lot of it does hinge on how the SoCon does out of the conference. They need to improve their performance there. But if there's enough key non-conference wins, I think that 8-win mark could get them in the playoffs. So I think that's what success looks like for the Buccaneers this year. Now we go to Furman, the Paladins, and this is a team that's going to be led by their defense. This defense is pretty much loaded all around, but I think in particular, one of the biggest things is they have Joshua Stone King back on that defense. He was in he is probably the favorite right now to win the Buck Buchanan Award. He is a star for this team. And I think there's going to be a lot of excitement around that. Usually on the offensive side, Clay Hendricks' teams have really emphasized strong line play. I'm confident that can continue. And then it'll be kind of interesting to see who ends up being the quarterback. You got a guy from Western New Mexico coming in. He was successful at a lower level. You've also got the big name, Jake Garcia, is here. You may remember him from he actually briefly provided a pop for Michigan a few years back. Now he's got his shot here to potentially lead Furman. So I think he could potentially be a good option for them. But ultimately, I think you're going to need to see the offense, whoever's the quarterback and then the guys around them, they need to find a way to take that step forward a little bit. Because if this offense is good, you got a defense that's great. So this will be a team that's right in the mix of the conference title race. So in terms of what success looks like, I think it does look like winning 8 or 9 games, making the FCS playoffs, maybe even winning a game. I think that's the expectation for Furman this year. I really think this is a team that can compete towards the top of this conference and in the playoffs. So that's going to be what they're going to be looking for there. Next, we go to the Mercer Bears. And, Mike Jacobs and his staff did an excellent job raising this program to power. They are now gone. They do bring in a new head coach in Joel Taylor from West Georgia. He did a great job there. West Georgia was transitioning to FCS and last year spent a ton of time in the top 25. So this staff knows what they're doing. And in general, you've got a lot of pretty good pieces here. You've got Braden Smith as a star receiver for them. Lots of talented West Georgia players follow this staff over. So you're looking to try to keep that momentum and going a little bit with this program because they're entering with the expectation that they're going to win this conference again. Personally, I think that's going to be a little bit difficult for them. And really because, Mike Jacobs is the one that built this program. He's now gone. There's just new leadership, so much roster turnover. I mean, so many of those key guys that helped Mercer win the SoCon the last 2 years are now gone. And I think now we need to see how they look. I'm kind of taking a wait and see approach on this team. I think a lot of others that because we do a preseason FCS top 25, and I think in either the CSG poll or the Redshirt Sports poll, there's a lot of people that have Mercer ranked, and I was not one of them. I need to see what this team looks like because it is an entirely new team, and I think it's possible we could see some growing pains here. So that's kind of what my concern is there. But they'll definitely need to, whatever they do, this is a team that can actually kind of help build the SoCon's playoff hopes here because if they at least take care of business in the non-conference, then you enter SoCon play, looking pretty good and, not all the pressure's on them to win too much of their games. Have to win all, only have 2 losses to make the playoffs and something crazy like that. So that will be kind of interesting. In terms of success, it's kind of hard to. This is a hard one to look at because again, this is a new coaching staff. Even if they fall short of the playoffs, you can argue, this is a reset. They're kind of figuring things out a little bit. But staying in the playoffs would definitely be a very successful year for Mercer. And I think they would be very happy with that. So that gets us to our next team here, the Samford Bulldogs. And this is really a full-on rebuild here at this point. Samford was playing great football not long ago, but things really fell off a little bit. Now they're kind of working their way back a little. They need to work their way back. So John Grass takes over. he was previously successful at Jacksonville State. So he's won in the state, he's won at this level. A guy who's been there and done that takes over now. They have a receiver in Preston Bird who's well worth the price of admission. He's the guy to work around a little bit. One of the other funny things is that Samford actually plays UAB this year, which is a pretty cool inner city game. Bragging rights for Samford fans here is that Samford actually has a 1-0 record against UAB all time. They've only played once. They're in the same city and they only played once, but Samford won that one 52-3. So I think that's why they haven't played again. But in terms of what they'll need to, this is going to take a while. There's not going to be a quick build here. The defense in particular needs to really figure things out a little bit. It's going to take some time, but this is a team that just needs to show a little bit of progress this year, be competitive in a lot of games, and it really just, get closer to getting back to 500 and really just get some excitement going and show that in the future they're going to be a top competitor in this league again. And now we get to the newcomer, the Tennessee Tech Golden Eagles. And this is a program that it really is like a shining example of, like, if everyone gets moving in the right direction, everyone, invest heavily into the program and, like, upgrade your facilities and just really get that support behind you, it can be really successful really quickly. Bobby Wilder took over here, and it took him just 1 year to get this program back to the playoffs. They had a home game in the playoffs even, and now you're seeing take off a little bit. Their renovated stadium debuts this year. They have a ton of momentum, and really just like, you've got what may be the best portal class in FCS. You got it really, and it's not like, you're adding like a lot of unproven talents. No, this is a team that added like proven guys. MJ Flowers and Qua Ashley at running back. Those guys were contributed at the FBS level. Now they come here and can be the featured guys. You have Gabe Nunez from Southern Utah, Eric Weatherly from Ball State. They join already a good receiver room with Sullivan and Holloway. So you've really got a lot of good pieces there. Nunez was a huge producer at Southern Utah. He's a really good receiver. And then Weatherly, he didn't get to do as much of Ball State as expected, but he was a huge contributor for Bucknell, so we know he can at least contribute at the FCS level. So you've got a really good group of players here. Now, the biggest question is, when you implement this many portal players, can they all get moving in the right direction? Can they play up to the level of promise they have? There's a lot of people out there that put in high expectations on this team, and I'm one of them. I put them in my top 10, my FCS top 25. So I have high expectations for this team. And it's going to be very interesting to see them take this unfamiliar role as a top conference title contender, especially playing in a new conference. Last year, they were in the OVC Big South Association. Now they go into the SoCon, where their competition week in and week out will be more difficult. So that's going to be interesting to see. Now we get to the Citadel, one of our favorite teams to look at and talk about. Always a big fan of what they got going on there. And we, Southern Rivals show, shout out to them. They do a great job covering the Citadel week in and week out. They cover everyone in South Carolina, but, South Carolina and Clemson, but they also spend as much time in the Citadel. So that's a cool show to check out if you haven't already. But the Citadel, they are continuing to try to find their way forward a little bit. Maurice Drayton is doing a really good job here. I really like the momentum he's building for this program, and they have some really good pieces to build around. I think you're going to see an offense take a step forward this year. You had Quentin Hayes at quarterback. He had the weird situation where he was no longer in Air Force during the spring last year and ended up here. He kind of came in late. This season, now he's had the whole offseason to work in being the guy. He's going to be a star for the Citadel. And I'm very excited to see how good this offense is going to look with him. They got some good offensive linemen up front. There's definitely a lot to love about the offense. However, the one concern this year is going to be, how do they replace lost starters in the defense? The defense was much more senior heavy last year. Those guys are gone, and it's taking time to build depth at the Citadel. So, like, what is the defense going to look like? And is it going to be able to hold up enough to take a bigger step forward? We'll find out. But I think success for the Citadel, like, they've been climbing towards that 500 level. I think hitting a winning record this year would be huge, especially considering, again, that reset on the defensive side. If you can get to 7-5, get closer to getting back to the playoffs, I think there's a lot to feel good about. Now we go to the other military academy in the SoCon, VMI. VMI is entering a new era here under Ashley Ingram, and I think it's going to take some time a little bit. They have a pretty solid back end of their defense. I think the secondary is going to help try to keep them in games a little bit. Really overall, like the defense could be pretty solid. The biggest concern for them is going to be, in general, like this is going to be a work in progress. It's going to take some time. And the offense needs to really find a way to score. Like for right now, scoring has for their offense the last couple of years, it looks like it feels difficult for them. And it's gonna, they're not gonna have like explosive receivers or anything. So it's gonna take some time to develop that. And to top it all off, like you had some pretty good receivers last year. They're now gone. Like I think even some of them landed at the FBS level. So that'll be a bit of a work in progress. But in terms of like for them being competitive, just showing, they won one game last year. So even winning two games shows positive momentum in the first year under a new coaching staff at a program that does require a rebuild. I think they're doing a lot to bring more excitement to VMI. So I think things, at least like top to bottom administration wise, are moving in the right direction. So just winning a few more games and being more competitive is enough to show, okay, this is moving in the right direction. And soon enough, we'll get to see VMI kind of move up a little bit more and win more games. Now we go to Western Carolina. And this is definitely one of the most interesting teams to watch last year. They have a lot of talent on this team. Their offensive line's really good, and their offense in general has just really, at this point, I feel like their offensive scheme works in the way where it's really just plug and play. Like you get a new quarterback in there, they're ready to be a star. They do a great job developing and finding really good receivers. I expect that to continue. So this offense is going to look very good again. Now, yes, losing a guy like Teron Dickens, he's an accurate player that doesn't come around very often. So that part will not be easy. I feel like last year he had to carry a lot. And this is the other concern here, like with the defense. The defense just simply could not get stops. And it was really up to Teron Dickens to try to either outscore the other team, or they didn't and they lost. Western Carolina just feels like they're so close to a breakthrough year, and every year the defense just seems to fall a little bit short. So I feel like one of these years they're bound to just hit lightning in the bottle on defense and all of a sudden win the SoCon. But that's still something that's a work in progress at this point. In terms of what success looks like, I think improving on that defensive side of the ball, we know the offense at this point is going to look good. So I think getting to 8 or 9 wins and making the FCS playoffs, I think that is what success looks like for this team. I think it's time to finally break through and get there. And I hope they do. I think that would be a lot of fun to see this team reach the playoffs. We get to the last team on our list, the Wofford Terriers. Now, Wofford is a team that will just grind it out. They'll run the ball, try to control possession, and really just in general, like they keep the opposing offense off the field. And their defense is very solid. Their defense does a pretty good job getting stops and helping them out. And they have a good quarterback in JT Fayard, who was there. He did a great job operating the offense. He took care of the ball. He's back. And now this year, he'll be looking to take a step forward in terms of efficiency, completing more passes to receivers, and just making the pass game a little bit more of a threat, because we know this team can run the ball pretty well. Defenses are going to focus on that. In order to win those bigger games, they need more pop from the passing game. And in terms of what success looks like, they kind of creeped up a little bit. They managed to get to 500 last year. So this year, finishing with a winning record would be helpful, but maybe even getting to that 8 or 9 wins and getting to the playoffs is another big thing. I think it's a very strong possibility for Wofford. So I think that is what successful would look like for them. So now we get to our picks, and this has been a pretty quick episode as a result of this conference not being too big. We need every conference to be this size. I think in terms of a sleeper pick, I'm looking at possibly here. I don't think Furman has very high expectations, but I think Furman could end up, if they can sort out the offense and get it to a higher level, replacing Trey Haddon and quarterback and all that. I think Furman could really end up being the surprise team that goes in and even wins the SoCon. But I'm also looking at other teams like Western Carolina, the Citadel, and maybe even Chattanooga as potential sleepers as well. I mean, there's really a lot of, it's a competitive league, so there's a lot of possibilities here. But in terms of the champion, I probably hinted at this at the beginning, but I am going with the Tennessee Tech Golden Eagles. I think they'll jump in and be successful right away. I'm a huge believer in head coach Bobby Wilder and really just like this impressive portal class. Like, this is a program that has a ton of momentum right now. And it was a great move by the SoCon to swoop them up. They needed a team like this in the conference. But I expect Tennessee Tech to win it and really just continue to show that they're going to be a really strong program to be reckoned with here. So with that, that is all for the episode. Thank you for tuning in. It is very fun to get to go and talk about these teams that are, especially in the SoCon where they have passionate fan bases, but they don't really get the coverage they deserve a lot of the time. So we're here to do that. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to like, subscribe, and or leave a review depending on whether you're watching this or listening to us in podcast form. Be sure to check out our Substack as well. We have written articles over there. We'll be talking about the SoCon throughout the year there too. And thank you for tuning in and continue to check us out. We're going to continue to cover these teams off the beaten path and really allow fans to get excited about their team and hear about them when they're not used to getting that. So thank you for tuning in.